We are talking all about the Kings AHL affiliate, the Ontario Reign, with special guest Jared Shafran on this edition of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, also co-host of the Puck Podcast, a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the last 18 years, and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, the LA Kings are still off for another week while the Four Nations face-off continues, but the Ontario Reign, the Kings AHL affiliate, is continuing to play. Matter of fact, they played Saturday afternoon north of the border, knocking off the Calgary Wranglers 4-3 in overtime. And here to talk about all things Reign is once again Jared Shafran, Manager of Communications and Content for the Ontario Reign. Jared, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
I'm great, Eddie. Thanks for having me. All is well here in Calgary.
Yeah, as I mentioned it, big win for the Reign, knocking off the top team in the Pacific Division, the Calgary Wranglers, in overtime. Reign are 28-14-3 on the season, 59 points. That's good enough for third place in the division, but just 3 points behind Calgary for first place. From afar, seems like the Reign are doing well. Obviously, we do not follow the team as closely as you do, so maybe you could give us kind of an overview on the Reign season to this point.
Sure. I think it's been a great season. A lot of development, which is the first goal for the LA Kings. A lot of young guys that have stepped into some pretty important roles on the team, but also veterans that are carrying the major load, that are guys that really the Kings' health. I know there hasn't been they haven't been completely free of injury. Obviously, Drew Doughty was out. Other guys have been out, but for the most part, the Kings, they haven't been hit too hard by the injury bug, and they've been successful. So a lot of these guys that are playing well for the Reign, it's good for the Reign that they haven't been called up. Maybe not good for their aspirations, but they've kept the lineup intact. Like the top 6 forwards have been pretty much the same the entire way. The addition of Andre Lee and Samuel Hellenius has helped. Those guys were with the Kings for a good chunk of the season, but now they're back with the Reign. They're playing well. They're pretty entrenched in their roles. And the defense has been really great as well in front of 2 goaltenders that, Phoenix Copley's the veteran. Kings fans know him well. He's been sensational over the last couple of weeks. He was struggling at the beginning of the year, I think, coming off of a pretty serious, obviously, knee injury. And it took him a little while to get going. Now he's playing about as well as he's ever played. Eric Portillo, a guy who had a good start to the season, was hotter at the beginning of the year, has cooled off a little bit, and the Reign have scored for him. So his record is, you would look at them and say, yeah, I need to be better. And of course, a guy who's looking at trying to make the NHL pretty soon in his career. So I think there's been, the expectation is pretty high for Eric Portillo, and he's still kind of getting where he needs to go. But overall, the team's getting scoring. They're playing good defense. They're out shooting their opponents pretty much every night. There's little things that they can still improve on. The power play hasn't been very good this year, at least the way that it's been the last couple of years since I've been with the Reign. They had Martin Ferk, they had TJ Tynan, they had guys who could kind of carry the power play at the AHL level. And Samuel Fagemo has still been, effective, but I think they have a little bit of work to do on the power play. It's about 17% right now. It's not even in the top 20 in the AHL. But having said that, if I'm just nitpicking, right? Like the team's still been really good by and large, and it's fun to be around a team that knows how to win, which is exactly what this Reign team has been like.
Well, obviously, people watching this show, they're LA Kings fans, and they may have varying degrees of familiarity with what's going on with the Reign, which is why we're having you on here, and we're happy to have you on. But you mentioned a couple of names that I would like that they're probably familiar with. And let's start with the 2 forwards you mentioned that have seen time with the Kings this season, Samuel Hellenius and Andre Lee. Hellenius, 27 games with the Kings, got his first NHL goal January 22nd against the Panthers, and Andre Lee, 19 games with the Kings, got his first NHL goal on January 1st against the Devils. Obviously, great to see those 2 guys get some NHL experience that maybe they weren't anticipating when the year started, but how have they looked now that they've gone back down to Ontario?
Yeah, I think for both of them, it's funny. Like it takes a few weeks to get back to just kind of understanding the league, understanding their role. At the NHL level, they're only playing, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 minutes a night, maybe 8 minutes. They're not really out there on a consistent shift when they've been on the fourth line with the Kings. So now they come down to the Reign, and they're obviously stepping into a much more higher minute level and higher expectation to contribute really at both ends of the ice. I think for both of those guys, they're more defense first players. So their numbers, and even look, before they got called up with the Reign, when they were with the Reign the last couple of years, you don't look at their numbers and say, wow, these guys are offensive juggernauts. They're more defensive first players. And that's why the Kings, really liked them and brought them up. And they both played outstanding in training camp. So neither of them are like adding a ton of offense. But right now, Andre Lee is now in the top 6. He's playing on a line with Jack Studnicka and Taylor Ward. And I think he's just doing all the little things, right? He helped set up a power play goal on Saturday in Calgary. He had the primary assist on that. It was a simple pass, but he's playing net front on the power play. So that's good for him to get that experience. He's out there on the penalty kill, as is Samuel Hellenius. Both of those guys are huge on the PK. Ontario, should have mentioned before, like their penalty kill has been really good all year. They're actually the number 1 penalty kill on the road this year. And Samuel Hellenius and Andre Lee are both big parts of that. I think for both of those guys, like it did take a little time when they got sent down for them to kind of get up to speed. Not that they don't know the system. It's not a new system. It's the same system the Kings play, but a little bit of a different role, a little different line mates, and just getting reacclimated to the AHL. But now they're both there. It's been great to have them. They both are so reliable defensively. The Reign are a much better team at both ends of the ice when they're seeing significant minutes.
And you mentioned Eric Portillo. He got his NHL debut with the Kings back on November 29th, beat the Ducks in Anaheim 2-1, 28-save performance. Record-wise this year, 14-5-3 for the Reign. Are you seeing the progression for him in another season of pro hockey? Are we satisfied? Are we seeing strides for him being, more consistent and kind of just getting more used to being at the pro level after having a standout career at Michigan?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing progression. I think that it takes time. Goalies are tough. The progression for goalies doesn't always go in a way that's easy to track and understand as an outsider, someone who is not there in the crease with them. Like it's just, you're on an island as a goalie. I think it's also, when you look at goalies' numbers, it's so dependent on what's happening in front of them. I think for Eric Portillo, the confidence has grown. I mean, last year he was a rookie in professional hockey, and he ended up having a nice playoff run where he was the backstop of this team, winning a couple playoff rounds. So that was really good experience for him. I think this year I think he's struggled at times. I think he's fought the puck a little bit. His rebound control still needs to improve. I think it was huge for him to go up to the NHL, get the experience of winning a game against a rival in a hostile environment in Anaheim like that. I mean, that is so crucial for his experience, but he just got that one game. He won, and then he had to come back to Ontario, and it's kind of like, okay, here we go back in the AHL. But he's only in his second season, so it's not like he's been toiling down in the minors for a long time. I just think, it's hard. You don't know when your opportunity is going to come. I think he wants it sometimes so badly that almost he's thinking too much. Like maybe letting the game come to him might help him, but I think he's still learning every day. I think it's great experience. Like the AHL is such a good league. He's seeing really, really good shooters every single night. The Reign defense has been pretty good, but I just think for some reason, like there are going to be breakdowns, and sometimes there's been a lot of plays that aren't his fault that are ending up behind him. So I think it's hard to just look at his numbers and say, oh, his numbers are down a little bit. Like he needs to play better. Like he would say, I need to play better. I know he would say that, but I also don't know that like he might be putting too much pressure on himself. Like I don't know how much different he's playing than what he has been before. So I think probably for him, the best thing is just to not think about it as much and just go out there and play. And when the opportunity comes, when the Kings have room for him, like they're going to give him that shot because they believe in it.
One quick goalie question for you. I hope you have an answer to, because I didn't know. So we did see that Darcy Kemper had an emergency situation, left the team for personal reasons. Phoenix Copley gets called up, but he goes back to the Reign and he did not have to clear waivers. Is there some sort of an emergency call-up situation? How does that work? Because I didn't know how that worked.
I think there's two parts to that. I think first part is that he was an emergency recall, so that may have been part of it. But the other thing is, I think once you clear waivers, if you go back up to the NHL, you have to spend 30 days on an NHL roster before you have to clear waivers again.
Oh.
So because he cleared waivers and only spent, because he did the same thing earlier in the season, if you remember when Kemper was injured really early on in the year, and Copley actually played in a game. He came in as in relief of David Riddick. I think it was, I want to say in Buffalo. Either way, he did play one game for the Kings, but he was only on the Kings roster for a few days on a road trip. And then he was sent right back down to the Reign, and he did not need waivers. So I think you need to have 30 days accumulated on the NHL roster before waivers comes into play. A guy like Jacob Moverari is a good example. He did clear waivers to get to the Reign, started the season with the Reign, went up to the NHL, but now he's been on the Kings roster. He's playing every night. So now he would need to clear waivers in order to be sent back to the Reign. Whereas a guy like Copley, since he was only up for a day or two, doesn't have that.
Very good. Thank you for clearing that up. Hey, we're just getting started with Jared Shafran. We'll talk more about what's going on with the Ontario Reign here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, the NBA action just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to be in on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. FanDuel's live betting keeps you engaged in every moment of the excitement, whether you're backing your team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three. Plus, the app is super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, we are continuing with Jared Shafran, who you can hear call the Ontario Reign games this season, taking over the play-by-play duties after being the analyst along with Josh Shaver for the past few years. How's that going for you? Are you enjoying calling the games as the play-by-play guy?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. And as we talked about, the Reign team's been pretty good. So that's always fun when you're calling some winning hockey. But it's great to be, at every game. We were at most every game, missing a few and, following remotely before. But definitely love the opportunity to step behind the mic and call all the action.
I know you're doing the games from the Saddle Dome there in Calgary, where the Flames play as well. Is that the only venue that is an NHL venue that you get to call games from this year?
Yeah, that's right. There used to be San Jose used to use their NHL arena as well for AHL, but now they have their own AHL facility. So this is the only NHL building that the Reign are playing in this year.
Very cool. So we've talked about some of the Reign players that we've seen in LA this year. I wanted to ask you about a player that some fans might like to see in LA at some point, and that is somebody you mentioned earlier, but the Ontario Reign's AHL All-Star this year, Samuel Fagemo, second in the AHL in goals last season. He's currently sixth in goal scoring this year with 21 goals, which leads the team. Can you talk about the season that Samuel Fagemo is having this year?
Yeah, I think he's having another good season. I think that, like I was saying before, like the Kings don't have any injuries up front right now. Like Mikey Anderson's been the only guy that's out on the back end. They've had plenty of defensemen. In fact, they've had so many defensemen, they had to put Andreas Englund on waivers and lost him to Nashville. So I think, for Fagemo, he's just kind of biding his time, hoping to get that opportunity again. He's having a good season. I think last year he was dominant, and I don't know that he's been dominant this year, but he's kept up his scoring. That's great. And I think he understands that, like, for him to be called up and get another opportunity, yes, the scoring is important, but he has to play that 200-foot game. And I think he's been really trying to work on that, because that's what he's hearing from up top, is that he needs to be responsible on both ends of the ice. So I think that's been something that he's always worked on. Like, I remember my first year here in 2021-22, he was playing penalty kill minutes for the Reign because they just wanted to make him more of a part of the defensive side of things, give him more versatility for whenever he got the opportunity. He's not doing that any longer at this point, but still, like when he gets up to the Kings, Jim Hiller, we see if you can't commit to the defensive side of the game, you're not going to get minutes. You're not going to play. So I think that's been the biggest key for him, is he knows that needs to be elevated. I think it was awesome for him to represent the team at the All-Star event. He's the perfect type of player for that, because he's got a great shot. So he participated in the hardest shot. He participated in the accuracy shooting. He's good on the breakaway challenge. He was in the 3-on-3. In 3-on-3 is one of his most effective things for the Reign, and in the shootout, he's great in the shootout as well. So I think he's having another really good year. I think they're just, there hasn't really been an opportunity. And when there has been opportunity, it's gone to, like we mentioned, Hellenius, Lee, and those guys are more suited for a bottom six role. Like this is the same thing that we've talked about for Fagemo. When he gets to the Kings, like he has to earn a top six spot for him to be a scorer, for him to get that ice time, for him to make an impact on the offensive end. If he is going to be in a fourth line role, playing with the other guys who are on the fourth line, like Tanner Jeannot or, Trevor Lewis, Akil Thomas, he's not going to get the same minutes. And he's probably not going to be as successful on the offensive end. So he needs to be able to do enough to earn that top six spot. That top six role hasn't existed for him, for the Kings, whenever he's gotten a chance to move up. So he's still working. He's still biding his time and hoping to get that shot.
Yeah, another player that you talked about, or you mentioned briefly, a guy that has Reign and now Kings games, is defenseman Jacob Moverara. Career high 35 NHL games so far this season, and has been locked in there on the third pairing. We didn't know he was going to get this opportunity necessarily coming into the season, but your thoughts on how well he's played and what's keeping him in the Kings lineup right now?
I mean, I just feel so happy for him, because I just feel like he's played a consistent game his entire career, and a lot of times he gets overlooked. And I'm so happy that the Kings have realized what value that he brings on that third pair. He is simple, shuts down defensively. He allows his partner to have a bigger role on the offensive side because of how dependable he is defensively. And he can defend against anybody. He can be matched up against almost anybody on the opposition. Kings don't have to play as many matchups with him and worry about who he might be out against. Like he just plays simple. And I think one of the reasons that he's staying there, in addition to playing simple, because that's really reliable, but also just his demeanor. He is just such a happy-go-lucky, easygoing person. Teammates love playing with him. He just enjoys every day. He's simply someone who comes in and realizes, like, I get to play hockey every day, and that's really cool. And he comes into the locker room and he just has a great sense about him. He's smiling all the time. He wants to be around his teammates, and he just comes in and enjoys his life. And so that's infectious, and you need that in the locker room. And he's not a loud guy. He's not a big personality. He's not going to come in and be, a vocal leader in the room. But he is someone that if you do see him, he's going to have a smile on his face. He's going to give you some positive, uplifting message. And he's always seeing the bright side of things. Like even after a loss, he's upset that he lost, but he still walks out of the locker room and says, we did our best. I'm going to play better next game. It's okay. Kind of lets it roll off his shoulder, goes home, watches a movie. Like he's really into movies, TV shows. And he's just someone who has the right attitude. And I think it's awesome that he's getting the shot here this year.
So we've talked about a lot of names, like I said, that Kings fans are likely familiar with, right? They've at least had some time in the NHL at some point this past season. But I do want to ask you about maybe some of the names that the typical Kings fans aren't maybe familiar with. Some of the guys that are having good seasons with the Ontario Reign that haven't had their shot yet to play in the NHL, perhaps. Yeah,
absolutely. I think, first of all, up front, the top line for Ontario has been pretty consistent this year. It's shuffled a little bit with Samuel Fagemo getting opportunities. Fagemo's been mostly on the second line, but he has played on the top line, obviously a very good scorer. But the three names that have been carrying the team up front are Jeff Malott, Charles Hudon, and Glenn Gaudin. All three of those guys have played in the NHL before. They were all NHL draft picks, but none of them have really stuck. They're all kind of a little bit older in their careers. I think for a guy like Hudon, he's on an AHL-only contract. He's a leader in the locker room. This is his second year with the Reign. He just scored a huge goal in Calgary to tie the game in the third period. He's got 17 goals on the season now. he is all offense, and he's just so fun to watch out there. He is a really good talent, but he's worked really well with these two newcomers. Jeff Malott is a strong, big body. You might remember he actually, I think, fought Samuel Hellenius during the LA Kings training camp, and it kind of set the tone. Like first day of camp, there was a fight, and it was like, whoa, this team is going to be more physical. They're out to, definitely, spike things up a notch. And Malott kind of tried to make a name for himself like that. He is not really a fighter. I think he only has like 2 fights on the season, so it's not like he's going out there trying to fight. He did have a fight last week against San Diego, but he is more of an offensive player. He scored 20 goals in the AHL each of the last 3 seasons. He was in the Winnipeg Jets organization with the Manitoba Moose. Did get a chance to play 1 game in the NHL, but hasn't really stuck there. I actually think that he could be a guy that fills in a 4th line role if the Kings need it. He is huge. He's 6'4". He is very strong, very hard to play against, goes right to the front of the net, has some good hands, skates really well. There's not really much to dislike about Jeff Malott's game. I think his skill and his upside does have a cap on it. It's not like he's going to come up to the NHL and score 30 goals. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if he were to play an NHL game tomorrow, I think he would not he would fit in. He would not look out of place. And he's been great for the Reign to have him because he's a great leader. He's now kind of been around the AHL for a while. He's been awesome on the wing as a top line forward. And then Glenn Gaudin at the center, a little bit undersized for maybe the NHL, but at the AHL level, he wins faceoffs. He's reliable defensively, makes really good plays with the puck, and he's over 40 points this year playing with Malott and Udon. They've been great in all situations. Marco Sturm trusts them against anybody. Those 2 guys up front, and then Jack Studnicka has also been a really nice addition. He's a former 2nd-round pick for the Boston Bruins. Really was a high-touted prospect. Has played over 100 games in his NHL career between San Jose and Boston. Also was with the Vancouver Canucks organization for a little bit. So definitely a guy that has been in the NHL, knows what it takes in the NHL. Also well-sized. I think he's 6'2", a center. So again, a guy who scored his 13th goal in the power play in the win over Calgary a couple days ago. So to me, there's a lot of depth for the Reign, and all those guys, I think any of them could be called up and play a good role for the Kings if it was needed. It hasn't been, and that's why the Reign are just enjoying to have them down here at the AHL level.
All right, a little bit more with Jared Shafran talking Ontario Reign here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. In sports, having a winning strategy is everything, and how the best teams can make the Super Bowl, the World Series, or the Stanley Cup Final is a part of that. Same goes for life. Having a strategy like life insurance from SelectQuote can protect your financial legacy and keep your family's future secure. SelectQuote makes it easy to find the perfect life insurance policy. As one of America's leading insurance brokers for nearly 40 years of experience, they've helped over 2 million customers find $700 billion in coverage since 1985. What sets SelectQuote apart from their personal touch. Unlike other brokers that offer one-size-fits-all policies, their licensed insurance tailors coverage to fit your unique needs. If you're in good health, you might even qualify for same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and it's more affordable than you think. You can also get $1 million in coverage for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL today to get started. That's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. SelectQuote. They shop, you save. All right, we're wrapping it up with Jared Shafran, also contributed to Kings Insider, LAKingsInsider.com, and you can see his wrap up on the Reign's latest win right now as the main feature story over there at LAKingsInsider.com. Jared, we've talked about some players that we're familiar with. I'm going to ask you this, and you can answer it any way you like, but the trade deadline is coming up in the NHL. It's an anxious time for players that potentially could be included in trades. So I'll phrase it like this. Who would you say a player or players on the Ontario Reign that you could see other teams maybe being interested in?
Sure. I think, probably to me, there's a couple different guys that kind of stick out. And I think we talked about a few of them, but for me, Francesco Pinelli is a guy that, a team might be interested in. He's a guy who scored an overtime winner for Ontario. He's got 12 goals this season. He's a former second-round pick. I don't know that the Kings have him necessarily as a guy who's available, but he's someone who's young in his career. He's only in his second pro season, but he's just not getting the minutes that he's probably actually earned. And it's through no fault of him or the Kings or Marco Sturm or anybody else. Like, Francesco Pinelli has played really well. He's probably earned a bigger role, but he's a center. The Kings are trying to develop him as a center, and they have their two more veteran guys, Glenn Gordon and Jack Studnicka, that are taking up top 6 minutes. So Francesco Pinelli was playing on the third line for a good part of the season, which was fine. It was good for his development. But then Samuel Hellenius came back down. Obviously, he's a pretty high profile, high priority prospect that the Kings want to get minutes. So now Francesco Pinelli's playing as a fourth line center. He's not a fourth line center. He's better than that. And that's one of the reasons why the Reign are a really good team. Their depth down the middle is fantastic. But Francesco Pinelli is a guy who could maybe interest somebody else, as someone who the Kings could say, okay, we do have a lot of depth right now in the organization. Maybe he gets a look as another team says, hey, we'll take him off your hands and give him a shot. I think Samuel Fagemo is another player who, we talked about him a bunch, and for him, he still hasn't had that shot in the NHL yet. So maybe a team looks at him and says, okay, we'd like to give him a look and maybe give him a shot, because he does have 21 goals this year. He's got 30 points. Like, he's an opportunity, a guy who a team might be interested in. Martin Chromiak is another guy who has been developing now for a few years with the Reign that maybe somebody might want to take a look at. Chromiak, 21 points on the year. So nothing crazy necessarily, but someone who, as a 5th round pick, has, I would say, maybe overachieved in his situation, where the Kings kind of considered him as one of their higher end prospects when he came in, and he's had a good opportunity. Just, again, hasn't gotten the chance to play up in the NHL. So he's someone that maybe that, another team is a younger guy who's still developing, like not an older veteran that the Reign have. So I think all those guys would maybe be someone who another team would be interested in. It's hard to know if the Kings are even considering trading any of these guys. I think the Kings, their prospect pipeline is a little bit it's depleted. So I'm not sure how many players they would really want to trade away, but obviously they're trying to win now. So even though those wouldn't be their, the guys that they want to trade, obviously you have to give something to get. So we'll see how that shakes out. But I definitely think there are good assets on the Ontario Reign that could work in a trade for the Kings, depending on what they're looking for and depending on what they're willing to part with.
All right. Well, the Ontario Reign back in action Monday afternoon, and you can hear Jared Shafran on the call as they take on the Calgary Wranglers once again. Jared, if anybody wants to check out that broadcast, how can they watch or listen to you, not only on Monday, but the rest of the season?
Yeah, sure. So our games are streamed on a service called Flow Hockey. It's AHL TV on Flow Hockey. That's a monthly subscription. You pay in each month, and you get every single game in the AHL, not just the Reign, but every single game. Get every single ECHL game. You can follow the Kings ECHL affiliate, the Greenville Swamp Rabbits, on there, and there's NCAA hockey on there. You can watch some of the prospects that are in the NCAA. That's available for a fee each month on Flow Hockey. And then we always have a free radio stream, so there's always a way to access the game. You can get it for free in about 4 different places. The Ontario Reign website, if you go to ontarioreign.com/radio, once we go live, that stream is available for free to listen to. It's also on the Reign app. It's also on the ESPN LA app. So there's a lot of options to listen to the radio feed of the Reign games. But yeah, if you want to watch it, it's on Flow Hockey, all 72 games.
All right, Jared, really appreciate the time joining us on the road up in chilly Calgary. Stay warm up there. Thanks for getting us great info on the Ontario Reign, and best of luck to you and the Reign the rest of the season.
Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Jared. Really appreciate that. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Feel smarter about what's going on with the Kings AHL affiliate for sure. For you everydayers, those of you that listen to watch Locked On Kings every day, coming up on Monday, we'll recap Adrian Kempe and Drew Doughty once again in action in the Four Nations Face-Off. Looking forward to that. If you want to communicate with the show, so you can send us an email, lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE, and you can always leave your comments if you're watching on YouTube in the comment section as well. We'd love you to stay interactive with the show on social media, X, Twitter, Instagram. We're at Locked On LA Kings. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Have a great rest of your day. We will talk to you tomorrow. And as always, go Kings, go.